everyone, we're going to establish the following identities. On these three, the main thing you need to know is that when you have sine squared, that equals 1 minus cosine squared. You just know that sine squared of theta plus cosine squared of theta equals 1. So if you manipulate these equations and you subtract cosine squared from each side, you'll get that. Similarly, you can do cosine squared of theta equals 1 minus sine squared of theta. So just remember those, and we'll continue on. So since I'm just trying to establish the identity, I want the left-hand side to look like the right-hand side. And you want to work on the more complicated side, which is the left-hand side. So what I'm going to do is write this as cosine of theta plus, and change the sine squared to 1 minus cosine squared of theta. Then we have cosine theta plus 1, and then we still have the equals 1. Now, on this, we have our difference of squares. So this is like 1 minus cosine theta squared. And we can write a squared minus b squared is a minus b times a plus b. Just know your factoring facts on that. So that's what I'm going to do to this piece right here. So I'm going to write cosine of theta plus, and when I'm going to write that, I'm going to write that as 1 minus cosine of theta times 1 plus cosine of theta divided by, and I can switch this around if I want, right, because it's a plus, and write 1 plus cosine of theta equals 1. So I'm going to cross out these two because they're the same, and rewrite this as cosine of theta plus 1 minus cosine of theta equals 1. And what happens is these two cancel out because you have cosine minus cosine. So then we have 1 equals 1. And that worked out. So the next one, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to rewrite this as 1 minus sine squared. All right, and then do your difference of squares and write this as 1 minus sine. And this is 1 plus sine. Now, what I can do, I'm going to write this here. This one is not so easy because we can't cross, these two are not the same. So what I'm going to do is multiply the numerator by -1 and multiply the denominator by -1. When I multiply the denominator by -1, I'm going to do that real quick. I'm going to have negative sine of theta plus 1. And if I rewrite that, I'm going to have 1 minus sine of theta. So as long as I multiply, because -1 divided by -1 equals 1. So as long as I do the numerator and the denominator the same, it's going to work out. So right now I'm just going to keep my negative in the numerator. And then in the denominator, I'm going to write 1 plus sine. And then denominator, I'm going to write 1 minus sine. All right? And so basically, I forgot to add a plus sign here. So this is plus sine equals -1. Sorry about that. So what happens here, now I can cross them out. But I still have this negative in front. So I'm going to distribute the negative. Let me try to squeeze all this in. When I distribute this negative to this piece and this piece, I'm going to get -1 minus sine of theta. Now add this, plus sine of theta equals -1. And what happens is these two cancel out. negative sign plus sign. We have negative 1 equals negative 1. And that checks out. Okay, the last one, we're going to do the same thing. So we write sine of theta minus, make sure you put this in parentheses, 1 minus sine squared of theta over 1 minus sine of theta. And then we have equals negative 1. Now let's break this down using our difference of squares factoring. So that's going to be 1 minus sine times 1 plus sine. Divided by 1 minus sine. And this equals negative 1. So now these two cancel out. And I'm going to just distribute that negative. You have sine of theta. And then distribute the negative to these two. So you have minus 1 minus sine equals negative 1. These two signs cancel. And we have negative 1 equals negative 1. And that's it. Thank you. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.